for religious freedom, and then much more debate later today on the Interior Department spending bill for 2012. The Senate is in today as well. So far today, they have confirmed the nomination of Gary Locke to be ambassador to China. Now live House coverage here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered today by our guest chaplain, Reverend Rick Postel, the Christian Renewal Church in Brunswick, Georgia.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you in Jesus' name on behalf of this great nation. We ask for your forgiveness of our transgressions and to thank you for your blessings and favor upon America. Keep us mindful of your word that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Grant these representatives wisdom to make decisions to strengthen our nation, motivated more by your hand than by partisan concern. Grant them grace to listen to one another with open hearts and minds. May the clarity and charity of their words reflect respect for their colleagues. May their decisions of today not become future apologies, but may they be a statement of this Congress's character, their firm resolve, and a hope for a better America. All this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son and our Savior. Amen.
The Chair has examined the Journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. And pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the Journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Sears.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Kingston, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our guest chaplain today is Mr. Rick Postel from Brunswick, Georgia. Rick is a native of Gastonia, North Carolina, and received his B.S. in Business Management from Troy State University and later a master's degree in theology from Beacon University in Columbus, Georgia. He currently lives in Brunswick, Georgia with his wife, Amy, and their 3 children. After graduating from school, Rick served in the United States Air Force Base at Moody Air Force from 1981 to 1986. He traveled extensively while in the Air Force and worked on the aircraft maintenance unit while at Moody, facilitating F-4 Phantom aircrafts. After his service in the Air Force, Rick served in the United States Post Office from 1986 to 2000. And then he joined the staff of Christian Renewal Church in Brunswick. He currently teaches religious studies at Heritage Christian Academy in Brunswick and has served as guest chaplain not only with us here today, but in the Georgia State Legislature on the Senate and on the House side. He travels extensively and has been to Mexico many times on a mission trip. His wife Amy is with him today, along with 18-year-old Sam and 16-year-old Charlie and 14-year-old Haley. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me Pastor Rick Postel. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Chair will now entertain up to 15 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Just has 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the Hill newspaper recently reported that there's another prominent glitch in last year's health care law. Millions of families could struggle to purchase insurance because of the sloppy manner in which the bill was written. The law mandates that every individual pay insurance. If the insurance offered by an employer is deemed affordable by the government, then an employee must purchase it. However, the federal government will only look at the individual plans offered by companies, not the family plans. While the plan for an individual may be affordable, the family plan could be significantly more expensive. Correcting this mistake in the law would mean at least $50 billion more per year in government subsidies. The President told the American people that the new health care law would not increase the deficit. Now we find yet another example of how this bill will cost both American families and the federal government far more than what was claimed. Clearly, we need full repeal before this law, full of glitches and mandates, is fully implemented, bankrupting families and the government. I yield back.
Much time's expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House and revise and extend my remarks, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, members, the House leadership has walked away from the negotiating table 3 times and continue to push their plan to cut Medicare, Social Security, and Medicare benefits, protect the top 2% of the Americans at the expense of 98% of our families, pass a short-term deal that would lead to credit downgrade, higher interest rates, and a tax hike on every American, and repeat this crisis next year. Let me read you some emails I've received. I'm disabled, a 57-year-old gentleman who is restricted in a wheelchair. I thank God I live in a country where I'm able to receive disability income like millions of other disabled Americans and Social Security recipients. I'm afraid if the Republican leadership gets their way, I'll soon be living on the street. I'm very concerned that the default would cause even more dire straits for the average homeowner even currently exist. They don't count the repercussions of higher interest rates, falling dollar in the global economy, lower earnings, annuities, and other investments as decreased principals. What we need is not a Republican plan or a Democratic plan. We need an American plan to deal with our deficit that will take care of it so we don't have all these dire consequences next Tuesday.
Expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Speaker, I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute, advise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in the Wall Street Journal, Fred Barnes documented on July 21st that in 1993 Canada faced a fiscal disaster similar to the one we're facing today. Government spending was on the rise, huge deficits were setting peacetime records, and economy was stagnant, an unemployment rate that was around 9% with interest payments on debt using 35 cents of every tax dollar. The newly elected Prime Minister in 1993 listened to the voters by stating, quote, "Canadians have told us that they want the deficit brought down by reducing government spending, not by raising taxes, and we agree," end of quote. By cutting spending, the Canadian economy roared back from 1995 to 1998 and turned a $36.6 billion deficit into a $3 billion surplus. The Prime Minister was able to put aside partisan politics and listen to the wishes of the Canadian people. By leading in a manner that cut spending instead of raising taxes, the Prime Minister put Canada first. Our President should change from his failed policies and stop tax increases destroying jobs.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we have less than 1 week to prevent our nation from defaulting on its loans. Rather than focusing on a compromise, the majority has come up here with another irresponsible plan to raise the debt ceiling and slash funding from programs that matter most to seniors and middle class. First, the budget tried to end Medicare and got Medicaid, all while protecting tax breaks for big oil and corporations that send jobs overseas. Then it was the so-called cut, cap, and balance to achieve the same objectives. Now, the Speaker has put forth another plan that seeks the same goals so they can impose cuts on Medicare and Medicaid, as well as set their sights on Social Security. This plan will keep the crisis going with a temporary increase in the debt ceiling, leaving the cloud of uncertainty over our economy. We need to instead focus on a compromise plan that Majority Leader Reid has presented to extend debt ceiling through 2012 to prevent certainty to the markets without hurting the economic recovery, as well protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security from cuts. Mr. Speaker, we must accept a compromise plan to raise the debt ceiling in order to prevent another recession and save jobs in America. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The House will now receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Madam
Mr.
Secretary.
Speaker, I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate agreed to the request of the House to return the bill, H.R. 1309, cited as the Flood Insurance Reform Act of 2011, to the House of Representatives.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Speaker, request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, over the past 10 years, the EPA has sent almost $100 million of taxpayer money to fund green projects in foreign countries. In 2010 alone, the EPA gave 18 grants to our good friends, the Chinese. Why does the EPA do that? We owe the Chinese over $1 trillion. Why are we adding to our debt in misguided hopes that they can clean up the smoggy skies in China with American grant money? There is more. Why is the Breathe Easy Jakarta program in Indonesia the responsibility of the taxpayers in Houston, Texas? Well, it's not. I don't breathe easier knowing green money from the U.S. is financing green development in Indonesia. At a time when we are facing somewhat of a financial problem, we can't afford to be trying to green the rest of the world, too. I'm for protecting our environment, but we do not have the money to spend in hopes of controlling pollution in other countries. Let's green America first, not China. And that's just the way it is.
I yield back. Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in the over 200 days since the majority has controlled this House, they have yet to bring a bill to the floor that would create jobs or help working families. Not one. Not one bill to create jobs and build a stronger economy for the future. Not one bill to invest in education, innovation, or infrastructure. Instead, we have a partisan agenda to unfairly burden the middle class with deep cuts while preserving tax cuts for the wealthy and loopholes for big oil and corporations that ship jobs overseas. And to make things worse, the majority is threatening to force an unprecedented default on our nation's debt. Default would destroy close to 700,000 jobs, spike interest rates on credit cards and mortgages, and cause untold damage to our struggling economy. This is not what the markets are looking for, and it's certainly not what the American people want. They want us to help create jobs and reduce the deficit. They want us to compromise on a fair and balanced approach that doesn't just kick the can down the road. American people are asking us today to put aside our differences for the good of this country, and I support this responsible approach and urge my colleagues to do the same. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, America stands on the brink of our nation's first default in history. Our economy is struggling. The federal government borrows $188 million every hour of every day. For too long, both parties have turned a blind eye to our government's budgetary mess. Washington needs to show the American people that we can deal with these challenges today and in the future. So far, it has failed to do so. Congress and the President need to quit the partisan games and do what's in the best interest of America. The time to act is now. The American people demand nothing less. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Massachusetts rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I recently heard from a long-term care facility in my district that is set to build an additional location, creating over 100 construction jobs and increasing the number of seniors able to receive quality care. The financing was in place, but when my constituent met with his bank this week about moving forward, the bank put the deal on hold. With the threat of a U.S. default unresolved, the bank was concerned that the facility's payments from Medicare and Medicaid would stop, leaving them unable to repay their loan. A 6-month extension, like the one being proposed, won't help my constituent reassure his bank or create the kind of long-term certainty needed in this still fragile economy. I urge my colleagues to reject short-term proposals that push us to the brink of default again and again, and call on the House to pass a plan that reduces the deficit while providing real, long-term economic certainty to our financial markets, to our small businesses, and to the American people who need the jobs these businesses create. Thank you.
Gentlelady's time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in the midst of all the talk about raising the debt ceiling, I don't hear anyone talking about the most important factor in this equation, our unsustainable national debt. Everyone is focused on raising the debt ceiling, But if we truly want to get our economy back on its feet, we need to begin paying off the debt that President Obama and his predecessors have created. It's obvious that our Democrat leaders in the White House and the Senate care more about making campaign speeches than about the livelihood of the American people. Liberals want to raise taxes, but of course not until after the elections. And they want to sham us with talks about future cuts that we will never see materialize. It's like one big Ponzi scheme, and they're trying to get the American people to buy into it. We need spending cuts now, and we need to pay down our outrageous debt. I urge both my colleagues and the American people not to fall for the accounting tricks. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois rise? Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been 29 weeks since Republicans took control of the House, and yet they have failed to bring a single jobs bill to the floor. In fact, I just learned that their proposals are estimated to cost another 2 million lost jobs. Instead, they're wasting time pushing bills that will never become law, but do make their position clear. Republicans are willing to hold the full faith and credit of the United States hostage in order to push for extreme policies that will gut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, devastate the economy and the middle class, while doing everything they can to protect millionaires and billionaires and companies that ship American jobs overseas. We need to raise the debt ceiling and then turn our attention to the real crisis, the jobs crisis. We can revive the American dream. We must.
Yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the 14.1 million Americans who are unable to find jobs. This administration's reckless spending policies, massive bailouts, and excessive regulations have driven the unemployment rate to an astounding 9.2%. Democrats have shown again and again that they care more about the bureaucrats that prevent jobs than the businesses that create them. Every year, unelected bureaucrats issue more than 3,000 final rules. That's close to 10 rules a day. Make no mistake, federally imposed rules consume precious time and resources. Businesses are less likely to invest and hire new employees. This is a recipe for failure. Americans have always been a forward-thinking and innovative people. We're constantly looking ahead to the next breakthrough. Unfortunately, businesses now look over their shoulders instead of aiming for the horizon. The American dream is still alive, Mr. Speaker. Just ask the men and women who are pounding the pavement, polishing their resumes, and looking for paychecks. Americans are ready. We need to make Washington tear down the roadblocks. I'll yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the Republican debt ceiling plan that will be considered later this week. My Republican colleagues have brought a bill to the floor that would introduce statutory spending caps for the next 10 years with mandatory automatic cuts across the board to all programs if the cap is breached. Disguised as a solution, this cap would quickly become one of the most serious budgetary problems this country has ever faced. While a spending cap might sound responsible, in reality, caps don't balance budgets. Caps trigger massive, unsustainable cuts. We tried this in California. The Republican spending cap jeopardizes our ability to improve our schools, rebuild the nation's crumbling infrastructure, and invest in R&D. A global spending cap is not a silver bullet for our budgetary woes. Far from being a budgetary cure-all, a drastic ceiling on spending would undermine our recovery when the economy gets better. So I urge my colleagues to abandon this hostage-taking on raising the debt ceiling and work with the President to lead us forward with a responsible debt reduction plan. Besides forcing significant cuts to important programs, a cap would make it nearly impossible to restore services that were cut over the recession. As our economy recovers, our step in to respond to the current or future economic challenges. Thank you.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The American people are depending on the Congress and the President to find a solution to the nation's skyrocketing debt. Now is not the time for partisan rhetoric. Rather, now is the time for both sides to come together and work on finding a bold bipartisan plan to address the nation's debt and debt ceiling. One thing we can all agree on is default is not an option. We will and must pay our obligations. Small business owners who have worked their entire lives for sterling credit ratings would receive a devastating blow if Washington can't set aside their differences and come together on this important debate. At a time when unemployment is at 9.2%, default is not an answer. We need to encourage the job creators of our country to invest and to hire, not paralyze them with even more economic uncertainty. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to work on a bold plan. There's no reason that we cannot come together and work to cut spending and put our nation back on the path to fiscal sanity. Americans across our country are depending on us to get the job done. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, when did the idea of compromise get to be a dirty word? When did the idea that my way or the highway is the only way to go forward become the order of the day? We are at a stalemate because we cannot come to some basic ideas about how to move forward. Now here's the fact, absolute fact, irrefutable. We do not need to link and tie deficit reduction to raising the debt ceiling. They are independent necessities. They are two different things, and one does not have to be tied to the other. And when you link the two together, you are holding the full faith and credit of the United States hostage to a set of budgetary cuts. This is a mistake. It is not statespersonship. It is not what we're elected to do. Now, yes, we have to do deficit reduction, but it doesn't need to be linked to raising the debt ceiling. We should raise the debt ceiling now and then work on debt reduction. Now, how do we do that? We need more people paying taxes to reduce the deficit. That means jobs. That means infrastructure. Let's get it done now. Raise the debt ceiling and pass a good infrastructure bill at the same time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to stand shoulder to shoulder with the landowners from San Joaquin Delta who are fighting against the peripheral canal. Without permission, the state is sending its employees into private farmland to conduct surveys that the state needs to conduct studies to build a canal. Delta farmers are not standing for it. Delta farmers have taken the case to the courts, and I urge them to keep fighting for their property rights and the health of the Delta. A peripheral canal or tunnel that takes large amounts of fresh water from the Delta would devastate our families, our farmers, and our businesses in our community. A canal will cause saltwater intrusion, destroy thousands of acres of farmland, and devastate our water quality. It's time for our state and federal agencies to respect the Delta and its people. We won't tolerate anything less.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize International Youth Day and to honor youth leaders in Rhode Island as we celebrate the culmination of the International Youth Year. Since 1999, when the UN designated August 12th as a day to recognize the integral role youth have played in sustainable progress, we have commemorated the importance of young people getting involved in our global, regional, and national development. In celebrating the many milestones of the youth of today, we also honor the lives and work of those who lead them. And Rhode Island has so many fantastic youth leaders. One such example is my friend Franklin Rodriguez, the Minister of Youth Affairs in the Dominican Republic and the President of the Ibero-American Organization of Youth, who has joined us here today in the gallery. Under Franklin's leadership, the Ministry of Youth has worked to engage and empower Dominican-American youth in Rhode Island by collaborating with the Community College of Rhode Island to provide training opportunities and honoring outstanding young civic and educational leaders in the community with their Youth Excellence Award. Many of Rhode Island's Dominican residents are young people who have contributed to the cultural, economic, and social development of our state in so many ways. For this reason, I'm honored to recognize International Youth Day, the leaders of the youth movement, and the culmination of International Youth Year. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair would remind members not to make personal reference of individuals in the gallery. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to strongly condemn the Syrian regime's recent hostility towards both the United States and the Syrian people. The courageous visit by U.S. Ambassador Robert Ford to Hama, the site of massive anti-regime protest, demonstrates that the United States stands by those who advocate for democracy and freedom. Days after Ford's visit, the American embassy in Damascus endured several violent pro-regime demonstrations, resulting in considerable damage. Had the Syrian security forces acknowledged their international obligations, these rioters in support of President Assad would not have been able to approach the embassy. By responding poorly, Assad has conveyed disrespect towards the United States. I applaud Secretary of State Clinton's recent tough stance toward Assad, declaring that his regime has lost legitimacy. Time and time again, Assad, like his father before him, has turned to arresting, torturing, and killing anyone who would stand in the way of his tyranny. Therefore, with the best interest of the Syrian people in mind, I call on President Assad to resign as president.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Address the House for 1 minute. Permission to revise and extend remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise to commemorate National Youth Sports Week and to welcome several exceptional student athletes joining us in the gallery. The Baltimore Squash Wise program and their leader, a local lacrosse star, are here to help us celebrate. Moments ago, I was joined by Hockey Hall of Famer Pat LaFontaine, former Redskin Ken Harvey, youth sports leaders and coaches to unveil the Fans for Youth Sports legislative agenda to address fitness, access, nutrition, and safety. Student athletes make better grades, get in less trouble, and are less likely to be obese. Sports shape the character of each child who walks onto the field. I'm especially pleased that some of our nation's top sports programs, including the NFL, the NHL, the PGA, and the U.S. Tennis Association, among others, are supporting this agenda. This agenda represents a renewed commitment to our nation's youth. Children are the best investment we can make in our future. We should never be too busy to help a child. Let's celebrate together National Youth Sports Week. I yield back.
Yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
My remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Saturday morning at midnight, following 20 previous clean extensions, funds for the Federal Aviation Administration was allowed to expire. Why did this happen? Simple. Just like the Republican Party's lack of leadership over the debt ceiling debate, they absolutely refused to compromise to extend funding for the FAA. For them, this debate is theoretical. Yet for the 4,000 Americans throughout the nation who are paid out of the FAA trust fund, they will not be paid, and tens of thousands who are affected by the cancellation of the airport construction project. This situation is real. For the state of Florida, that includes over 3,000 airport construction jobs lost and 27 FAA employee jobs, 19 of them in the Orlando International Airport. Let me just be clear. The reason that the FAA extension was not renewed is because the House Transportation Committee Chair, Mr. Macker, inserted language in the FAA extension bill that would end the program that provides subsidy to rural airports. Shame, shame, shame on the Republican leadership in this House.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise? Colorado.
For permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Kentucky's a nice place.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I am from Colorado, and in Colorado, you know, just like all across the country, Americans believe that if they work hard, if they play by the rules, if they're responsible in how they conduct their lives, they're going to get ahead. Well, it's been very tough. Here recently, we've had a downturn. You know, we have all this uncertainty because of, I believe, Republican brinksmanship to, you know, either shut down the government or maybe shut down the economy. Well, people want to get ahead. They want to know that this country will continue to innovate, educate, and rebuild itself so that we have good, long-lasting jobs that provide for our families. That's what Democrats stand for. We don't stand for all this brinksmanship every day. You know, are we going to have a government or are we not? Are we going to have an economy or are we not? That's got to change. We got to get back to rebuilding the American dream. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to extend some great congratulations to the Santiago Canyon College's Imagine Cup team. Earlier this month, Team Syntax Errors accomplished what many thought they would never do. First of all, we're talking about a community college, and especially with the cuts happening in California to these wonderful colleges we have, they went and they competed against 430 of the best universities in the world. In addition to that competition, this community college is a gem for our community. Santiago Canyon's Team Syntax Errors prove that hard work and determination can make impossible dreams come true. They placed within the top 15 universities in the world. So I am very proud of these students, and I admire their ambition. They are true role models for all of our young students striving to succeed in an ever-changing, ever-global world. It is my honor to recognize Hayden Donzi, Bill Vetter, Gary Kelly, and Dale Lazur for their remarkable accomplishments. Congratulations. And, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate and celebrate the city on the occasion of its 350th birthday. Originally inhabited by the Mohawk tribe and then the Dutch, Schenectady's rich history has often served as an inspiration and genesis for many of America's accomplishments. In the late 1800s, Thomas Edison moved Edison Machine Works to Schenectady, where advances led to new products, including the manufactured light bulb, later becoming the headquarters of General Electric. Schenectady also played host to the former home of Alco, the American Locomotive Company. These two developments prompted the community to be dubbed the city that lights and hauls the world and the electric city. Today, Schenectady is an important part of New York's Tech Valley, a nationwide leading region committed to green technology. From steam turbines to advanced batteries, Schenectady continues to lead the country with a focus on ingenuity and innovation, proving we can make it in America. I am pleased to applaud the city of Schenectady on the rich history and numerous achievements it has accrued as we celebrate the wonderful 350th birthday of this community and look forward to many bright and booming days to come. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on the motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote of the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote is objected to under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. What purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and call up the bill H.R. 440 as amended.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 440, a bill to provide for the establishment of the Special Envoy to promote religious freedom of religious minorities in the Near East and South Central Asia.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith, and the gentlewoman from California, or gentleman, Mr. Berman from California, will each control 20 minutes. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise and urge my colleagues to support H.R. I yield myself just time to make it soon.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Speaker, I rise to urge my colleagues to support H.R. 440, establishing a special envoy to promote religious freedom of religious minorities in the Near East and South Central Asia. The bill is authored by my very good friend and colleague, Congressman Frank Wolf, who was also the author of the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 and other religious freedom legislation. He has taken the lead in this Congress time and time again to advance the cause of those who are persecuted because of their faith. I wish to thank him for his years of service on this issue, his legislation and tireless advocacy on behalf of religious freedom. Mr. Speaker, This bill establishes the special envoy position for religious minorities in 31 Middle Eastern and South Central Asian countries, almost all of which have had bad or very bad records of persecuting or disadvantaging religious minorities. The special envoy will represent the United States in contacts with foreign governments, intergovernmental organizations, UN agencies, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and in contacts with international organizations and multilateral conferences. They will also meet with victims and try to take their story to offending governments to try to mitigate the abuse. We know from experience, Mr. Speaker, that special envoys, including and especially for Sudan and Northern Ireland, have achieved unparalleled successes over the years in mitigating explosive situations and literally saving lives, all while pursuing positive and durable solutions to what appear to be intractable and unresolvable problems. But not all special envoys have been equally effective. Almost everything depends on whom the President appoints to the position, so I would appeal to the President, when this bill becomes law, appoint someone with the passion, with the energy, and with the experience to get this job done and to stand up as never before for these persecuted minorities. Mr. Speaker, I am particularly concerned, and all of us and many of my colleagues will speak about different religious minorities in the Middle East, but I am particularly concerned about the Coptic minority in Egypt. They have been called the bellwether of the rights for religious minorities in the Middle East. As the largest and one of the oldest minorities, their suffering and their escalating agony portends suffering throughout the region. And make no mistake, they are suffering. On Friday of last week, I held a hearing specifically to hear of the needs and experiences of the Copts during this time of transition. What I heard and what my colleagues heard on the Helsinki Commission worried us deeply. Coptic women and girls, some as young as 14, are being systematically lured from their families or kidnapped off the street corners and forced to change their religion and forced to marry outside of their community. These young girls frequently suffer physical and psychological abuse, including rape, beatings, forced isolation, and lack of personal freedom, both before and after their so-called marriage and conversion. The drugging of victims appears to be commonplace. One story that emerged at the hearing detailed the situation of a married woman who was forced to leave her Coptic community and marry a Muslim. Her family was present at the official inquiry, which are no longer conducted, I might point out, and said that she showed signs of being drugged. She was out of it. Over and over she repeated, "I just had to do it for the children. I had to do it for the children." Dr. Michelle Clark, an internationally recognized anti-trafficking expert, she was one of those who led the Protection Project at Johns Hopkins and was director of the OSCE trafficking efforts for years. She testified, she authored a report called The Disappearance, Forced Conversions, and Forced Marriages of Coptic Christian Women in Egypt. She testified that this happens to thousands, I repeat, thousands of Coptic women and girls each and every year. She said this on Friday. Others also concurred in that analysis. Dr. Clark further testified that the mounting evidence shows that the term alleged, which has been used in the country reports on human rights practices as well as in the TIP report, needs to go away. It's no longer even close to being accurate. It's not an allegation. It's a fact that she herself, as a human rights investigator, has helped to establish by doing actual inquiries on the ground in Egypt. She pointed out that the criminality of alleged forced marriages and conversions is generally dismissed by authorities here and everywhere else, especially in Egypt. Young women are presumed to be willing participants. The abduction and the disappearance of Coptic women and girls follow, as she puts it, consistent patterns. Men and women and peers are used to build trust and dispel resistance in young women, targeted for conversion and marriage. Most cases documented in the report begin with a trusting relationship that ultimately leads to the disappearance or abduction, marriage to a Muslim man, and conversion to Islam. These supposed new friends exploit the vulnerability and the naivete of a young Coptic woman. Once trust has been established, girls are lured to an isolated place, drugged, and kidnapped. Often they are raped. Following the rape, the Coptic women experience shame and fear of how their families will respond. They become more willing to stay with the Muslim friends. They feel that they have been so abused, and then they often marry their rapists because they feel they have nowhere else to go. She testified that in many cases the young women protested their conversions in order to secure to Islam, and they're no longer available, but that went nowhere with those that they protested to. Let me just point out to my colleagues, then I'll reserve the balance of my time, what is going on in Egypt and the abuses being experienced by Christians and people of the Baha'i faith in Iran and elsewhere. We need to do much more than we have done to combat this, to speak out, to do good chronicling, but also, once you get the information, to ensure that it is actionable and that you take it to those governments. We have not done that. A special envoy would be uniquely equipped to take the cause of the beleaguered, suffering religious minorities in the Middle East and to fight every day of the week for those people. I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman reserves. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in strong support of this bill and yield myself as much time as I may consume. This bipartisan legislation creates a special envoy to promote religious freedom of religious minorities in the Near East and South Central Asia. Housed at the State Department, the special envoy would be responsible for monitoring and combating acts of religious intolerance, engaging with foreign governments to address laws that discriminate against religious minorities, and working to ensure that the unique needs of religious minority communities are being addressed. This bill is important because religious minority communities all around the world, but particularly in the Near East and South Central Asia, are facing increased attacks and increased persecution. For example, in Iraq used to have a significant numbers of religious minorities, including Christians, Yazidis, Sabian Mahdians, Baha'is, Shabaks, Kakakis, and a small number of Jews. These groups have been subject to escalating violence, persecution, and discrimination for their religious beliefs, and today they comprise only about 3% of Iraq's population. By some estimates, half of Iraq's Christian population has fled since 2003. In November of 2010, a Pakistani court sentenced Asia Bibi, a Christian and mother of 5, to death under the country's blasphemy law. And what was her offense? In June 2009, she was asked to get water for herself and a group of women working in the fields with her. The other laborers objected to a non-Muslim touching the water bowl, and an argument ensued. That group of women later falsely accused Asia of speaking ill of the Prophet Muhammad in order to settle a personal score against her. Asia remains in prison awaiting review of her death sentence. When Punjab's Governor Salman Taseer had the courage to demand that Asia be pardoned, one of his own bodyguards killed him. 2 months later, when Pakistan's Minister for Minorities, Shahbaz Bhatti, condemned the blasphemy law, militants executed him in broad daylight. In Egypt, as the gentleman from New Jersey has stated, 23 men, women, and children were killed in a bombing at an Alexandria church in Egypt on New Year's Eve. Just last May, extremists attacked Christians at St. Mina Church in Cairo, leaving 12 dead and hundreds wounded. We are fortunate. I wish these were isolated cases, but I could provide countless other examples from Afghanistan to India to Saudi Arabia. We're fortunate to live in a country that was founded by religious refugees on principles of tolerance, but it is important that we do everything we can to ensure that religious minorities elsewhere in the world enjoy the freedoms and protections they deserve, the freedoms and protections enjoyed by all Americans. Appointing this special envoy will be an important step in that direction, and I urge my colleagues to support this bill. I reserve the balance.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New Jersey is
Mr. Speaker, I
recognized.
yield such time as I may consume to the distinguished chairman of the Subcommittee on Justice and for the Appropriations Committee, the author of H.R. 440, Frank Wolf.
Gentleman is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Revise and extend, if I may. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I want to thank Chairman Ross-Leighton for her support, and Mr. Berman for his support, and Mr. Smith for his help. I also want to thank some key staff members whose hard work and efforts on the bill have not gone unnoticed. Elise Anderson, Kalinda Stevenson, Yolande Pablet, Steve Stombres, and Kyle Nevins with the Majority Leader's office. So they have been very, very helpful, and I am grateful for their help. This past January, in the wake of increasing violence, targeted attacks, and heightened discrimination against Christians and other religious minorities in Iraq and Egypt, and persisting concerns in Afghanistan and Pakistan, among other nations, I introduced bipartisan legislation, H.R. 440, which would require the administration to appoint a special envoy to advocate for religious minorities in the Middle East and South Central Asia in order to make this issue a foreign policy priority. Since introduction, this legislation has garnered widespread bipartisan support with nearly 80 co-sponsors. I want to thank Anna Eshoo, the lead Democrat in the House, for her work on this. Also, companion legislation is introduced now by Senators Roy Blunt and Carl Levin. The legislation has also been championed by a host of faith-based organizations and the diaspora communities who recognize the importance of ensuring that the vulnerable communities have an advocate within the U.S. government and around the world. Shortly before introducing this legislation, I chaired a hearing at the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission on the recent spate of attacks and the ongoing persecution of Christians in Iraq and Egypt. Commission members heard testimony about the increasing sectarian tensions in the two countries and the need for greater U.S. attention to the plight of the religious minorities. The hearings was held prior to recent events in the Middle East, which have in some cases created a political vacuum that have left religious minorities particularly vulnerable. I heard this fear expressed time and again during a recent trip to Egypt. Religious minorities throughout the region, including those who are Jewish, Ahmadis, Baha'is, are under increasing pressure. In fact, many of these ancient faith communities have been forced to flee the lands that they've inhabited for centuries. Consider some of the following. Last October, at least 70 people were killed during a siege on Our Lady of Salvation Church in Baghdad, making it the worst massacre of Iraqi Christians since 2003. Iraq's once vibrant Christian community population has been reduced by at least a half since 2003. This would be tragic under any circumstances, but it is especially so given the rich ancestral heritage of this indigenous community. Apart from Israel, the lands and people of modern-day Iraq are mentioned with greater frequency in the Bible than any other country. Abraham, Jonah, Nineveh, Esther, Daniel, all hail from Iraq. The Christians of Iraq today still speak Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, countries where the United States has invested its treasure and its lives of countless brave American soldiers, persecution of Christians run rampant. On November 7 last year, a Pakistani court sentenced Aziz Bibi, a Christian mother of 5, to death for the crime of blasphemy. Only after intervention by the international community was her execution delayed. Her fate still remains at this moment unclear. Pakistan's blasphemy laws are often used to victimize both religious minorities and Muslims. Earlier this year, Punjab's influential governor, Salman Taseer, was shot and killed by his own bodyguard, who reportedly told police that he, quote, killed Mr. Taseer because of the governor's opposition to Pakistan's blasphemy laws. In April, Pakistan's Federal Ministry for Minority Affairs, Shahbaz Bhatti, a heroic man of faith whose courageous and outspoken leadership against his nation's draconian blasphemy law made him a prime target of extremist Islamist elements in the country. He was assassinated. Bhatti was the only Christian member of the Pakistani parliament. In an interview with the Washington Post, Fred Hyatt, Shahbaz Bhatti, quote, urged Americans not to forsake us or not to forget us, Pakistan's suffering religious minority community. Members of the Jewish faith continue to experience discrimination and persecution throughout the region. The Special Envoy for Anti-Semitism, Hannah Rosenthal, has noted that the Holocaust glorification is, quote, especially virulent in the Middle East media. If the international community and our government fails to speak out, the prospects for religious pluralism and tolerance in the region are bleak. I urge my colleagues' support for this bill, and again thank the leadership on both sides for making this legislation a priority. I am hopeful that this bill will overwhelmingly pass the House and declare a clear and unequivocal message to both the persecutors and the persecuted that the United States of America stands with those whose most basic freedom, the right to worship according to the dictates of conscience, is under assault. And thank the gentleman and yield back the balance of my time.
This gentleman from New Jersey reserved. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very pleased to yield at least 3 minutes to my colleague who brought this bill to my attention and who has worked with Congressman Wolf, the gentleman from Virginia, to put it together and bring it to this point, deeply committed on this issue, and a very great member of Congress, my colleague from California, Ms. Eshoo.
Gentlelady from California recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Mr. Berman, our distinguished ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, not only for giving me this time, but for his conscience, because that indeed is what this is about, and his unflagging leadership on so many issues. And your endorsement and strong support of this bill, I think, bolsters it enormously and says to the entire House that a person that is steeped in the background of the issues of the entire world is for this. I want to pay tribute to Mr. Wolf for his incredible advocacy on this issue relative to religious minorities for so long. It's an honor to have worked with you to bring this to a realization of not only legislation, but to bring it to the floor, and I salute you. You're a gentleman, and you, too, are a man of great conscience. So, Mr. Speaker, I think today we're here on something that really distinguishes the United States of America. From the founding of our nation, religious freedom has been a pillar of our democracy, and it remains one of the most critical exports of our great nation. And I think having said that really establishes the foundation of why we are here in strong support of H.R. 440. This bill, as my colleagues have said, will create a special envoy to promote religious freedom of religious minorities in the Near East and South Asia. The legislation responds to the very urgent needs of Christians and other religious minorities who are under siege. And when I say that, I underscore it. They are under siege in the Middle East. Again, I commend everyone, especially Mr. Wolf, who have been part of this effort, and as a co-chair of the religious minorities community and all the members of it, I thank them as well. In January of this year, Representative Wolf chaired a hearing to review the violence and the hardship faced by Middle Eastern religious minorities. I was privileged to testify that day about the plight of many people, but most especially the Assyrians. I am of both Assyrian and Armenian descent, and the language that Mr. Wolf spoke of, Aramaic, I speak fluently. and understand very well. It is the language, as he said, that Jesus spoke. These are the world's oldest Christians, and they are quickly disappearing from Iraq. During this hearing, we also learned of Egypt's Coptic Christian population and what they face and the renewed threats and unacceptable violence in that uncertain political situation. And at the conclusion of the hearing, we agreed to press forward with this. May I ask for 2 more minutes?
Yield the gentlelady 2 minutes.
Gentlelady is recognized for an additional 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. At the conclusion of the hearing, we agreed to press forward with this legislation to create a special envoy at the State Department, someone at the ambassador level, to elevate this issue for the attention it deserves. We need a high-level official dedicated to religious freedom in the region, committed to addressing the concerns of minority communities. I'm very, very pleased that this legislation has attracted very solid bipartisan support. We have 78 co-sponsors, an even split between Republicans and Democrats, all calling for the State Department to elevate this religious freedom in the Middle East as a diplomatic priority. And there is a history for that, for this, I should say. Senator John Danforth served our nation as special envoy to Sudan, and Senator George Mitchell, as we all know, as special envoy to Northern Ireland. So there is precedent for this. I want to speak of a meeting that I had in my office last week. 3 Dominican nuns, sisters, had traveled from Iraq. They once again relayed their story of what is happening to them. They have been dispersed across Iraq. They teach everyone, regardless of their background, Muslims, Christians, no matter what the background is, and in their hospitals they care for whomever is sick and wounded. And yet their convents have been burned, the statue of the Blessed Mother's hands chopped off and placed at their door. And so these threats are very real. They are very real. That is just one example of it. So this history of violence must and should be dealt with. And as I said, our great nation treasures its religious freedoms, and it's a part of the core of our democracy. So that's why I urge all of my colleagues to join us, not just me, but all of us, in supporting this important legislation. And the message that will go forward from this chamber, with all the other issues that are swirling around us, is that we stand with great dignity for one of the great principles of our great nation.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized. Gentleman from California is recognized.
I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Illinois, who both here and abroad fights against persecution and discrimination against religious minorities.
Gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding to me. I rise in support of H.R. 440, a bill to provide for the establishment of a special envoy to promote religious freedom of religious minorities in the Near East and South Central Asia. I want to thank my colleagues, Congressman Frank Wolf and Congresswoman Eshoo, for introducing this legislation and for their tireless leadership on this critical issue. Ethno-religious minorities continue to face a crisis in Iraq, where attacks and violence against Christians continue. My district is home to a large and vibrant Assyrian population, and they regularly share with me the devastating stories of their friends and family members still living in Iraq who are facing threats because of their faith. In November 2010, over 1,500 protesters demonstrated in Chicago, sending a powerful message about the need to protect Iraqi minorities. By creating a special envoy specifically focused on the rights of religious minorities in the region, this legislation is an important step toward ending the cycle of violence. To date, the U.S. government and the international community unfortunately have failed to provide security for Iraqi ethno-religious minorities. Iraqi Christians continue to fear for their physical safety as well as for their survival in their communities and culture. Of a population that numbered 1.4 million people before the American-led invasion, there are now less than 500,000 Iraqi Christians in country. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 440 is a critical step toward addressing the threat against Iraqi ethno-religious minorities, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this bill. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Dole.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. Since 1947, 49 million Hindus in Bangladesh have gone missing, according to Professor Sachi Distar. And a recent Hindu-American Foundation report concluded that the Hindus of Bangladesh continue to be victims of daily acts of murder, rape, kidnapping, temple destruction, and physical intimidation. Dr. Richard Benkin, an authority on human rights abuses in Bangladesh, has described to me on several occasions the atrocities and human rights abuses suffered by Bangladeshis Hindus that he personally has verified. Other groups like the Christian Assyrians in Iraq's Nishaba province, the suffering of the Baha'i prisoners in Iran, and the millions of others who seek to practice their religion in peace look to the United States as a beacon of hope. I believe this bill helps us answer that important call. H.R. 440 will create a powerful diplomatic tool for the promotion of religious freedom and for human rights in the volatile regions of the Near East and South Central Asia. I thank the gentleman for his bill, and I urge support for this meaningful legislation and yield back the balance of my time.